Heraldry is a broad term, encompassing the design, display, and study of armorial bearings, as well as related disciplines, such as vexillology, together with the study of ceremony, rank, and pedigree. Armory, the most familiar branch of heraldry, concerns the design and transmission of the heraldic achievement, more commonly known as the coat of arms, usually consisting of a shield, helmet, and crest, together with any accompanying devices, such as supporters, badges, heraldic banners, and mottoes. Although the use of various devices to signify individuals and groups goes back to antiquity, both the form and use of such devices varied widely, and the concept of regular, hereditary designs, constituting the distinguishing feature of heraldry, did not develop until the High Middle Ages. The use of helmets with face guards during this period made it difficult to recognize one's commanders in the field when large armies were gathered together for extended periods, necessitating the development of heraldry as a symbolic language. The beauty and pageantry of heraldic designs allowed them to survive the gradual abandonment of armor on the battlefield during the 17th century. Heraldry has been described poetically as the handmaid of history, the shorthand of history, and the floral border in the garden of history. In modern times, heraldry is used by individuals, public and private organizations, corporations, cities, towns, and regions to symbolize the heritage, achievements, and aspirations. History. Precursors. Various symbols have been used to represent individuals or groups for thousands of years. The earliest representations of distinct persons and regions in Egyptian art show the use of standards topped with the images or symbols of various gods, and the names of kings appear upon emblems known as serics, representing the king's palace, and usually topped with a falcon representing the god Horus, of whom the king was regarded as the earthly incarnation. Similar emblems and devices are found in ancient Mesopotamian art of the same period, and the precursors of heraldic beasts such as the griffin can also be found. In the Bible, the Book of Numbers refers to the standards and ensigns of the children of Israel, who were commanded to gather beneath these emblems and declare the pedigrees. The Greek and Latin writers frequently described the shields and symbols of various heroes, and units of the Roman army were sometimes identified by distinctive markings on the shields. Until the 19th century, it was common for heraldic writers to cite examples such as these, and metaphorical symbols such as the Lion of Judah or Eagle of the Caesars as evidence of the antiquity of heraldry itself, and to infer therefrom that the great figures of ancient history bore arms representing the noble status and descent. The Book of St. Albans, compiled in 1486, declares that Christ himself was a gentleman of coat armor, but these fabulous claims have long since been dismissed as the fantasy of medieval heralds, for there is no evidence of a distinctive symbolic language akin to that of heraldry during this early period, nor do many of the shields described in antiquity bear a close resemblance to those of medieval heraldry, nor is there any evidence that specific symbols or designs were passed down from one generation to the next, representing a particular person or line of descent. The medieval heralds also devised arms for various knights and lords from history and literature. Notable examples include the toads attributed to Pharamond, the cross and martlets of Edward the Confessor, and the various arms attributed to the Nine Worthies and the Knights of the Round Table. These too are now regarded as a fanciful invention, rather than evidence of the antiquity of heraldry. Origins of modern heraldry. The development of the modern heraldic language cannot be attributed to a single individual, time, or place, although certain designs that are now considered heraldic were evidently in use during the 11th century. Most accounts and depictions of shields up to the beginning of the 12th century contain little or no evidence of the heraldic character. For example, the Bayeux tapestry, illustrating the Norman invasion of England in 1066, and probably commissioned about 1077, when the Cathedral of Bayeux was rebuilt, depicts a number of shields of various shapes and designs, many of which are plain, while others are decorated with dragons, crosses, or other typically heraldic figures. Yet no individual is depicted twice bearing the same arms, nor are any of the descendants of the various persons depicted known to have borne devices resembling those in the tapestry. Similarly, an account of the French knights at the court of the Byzantine Emperor Alexius I at the beginning of the 12th century describes the shields of polished metal, utterly devoid of heraldic design. A Spanish manuscript from 1109 describes both plain and decorated shields, none of which appears to have been heraldic. The Abbey of St. Denis contained a window commemorating the knights who embarked on the Second Crusade in 1147, and was probably made soon after the event, but Montfortin's illustration of the window before it was destroyed shows no heraldic design on any of the shields. In England, from the time of the Norman conquest, official documents had to be sealed. Beginning in the 12th century, seals assumed a distinctly heraldic character. A number of seals dating from between 1135 and 1155 appear to show the adoption of heraldic devices. In England, France, Germany, Spain, and Italy, a notable example of an early armorial seal is attached to a charter granted by Philip I, Count of Flanders, in 1164. Seals from the latter part of the 11th and early 12th centuries show no evidence of heraldic symbolism, but by the end of the 12th century, seals are uniformly heraldic in nature. One of the earliest known examples of armory as it subsequently came to be practiced can be seen on the tomb of Geoffrey Plantagenet, Count of Anjou, who died in 1151. An enamel, probably commissioned by Geoffrey's widow between 1155 and 1160, depicts him carrying a blue shield decorated with 6 golden lions rampant. He wears a blue helmet adorned with another lion, and his cloak is lined in fur. A medieval chronicle states that Geoffrey was given a shield of this description when he was knighted by his father-in-law, Henry I, in 1128, but this account probably dates to about 1175. The earlier heraldic writers attributed the lions of England to William the Conqueror, but the earliest evidence of the association of lions with the English crown is a seal bearing 2 lions passant, used by the future King John during the lifetime of his father, Henry II, who died in 1189. Since Henry was the son of Geoffrey Plantagenet, it seems reasonable to suppose that the adoption of lions as an heraldic emblem by Henry or his sons might have been inspired by Geoffrey's shield. John's elder brother, Richard the Lionheart, who succeeded his father on the throne, is believed to have been the first to have borne the arms of 3 lions passant guard and, still, the arms of England, having earlier used 2 lions rampant combatant, which arms may also have belonged to his father. Richard is also credited with having originated the English crest of a lion statement. The origins of heraldry are sometimes associated with the Crusades, a series of military campaigns undertaken by Christian armies from 1096 to 1487, with the goal of reconquering Jerusalem and other former Byzantine territories captured by Muslim forces during the 7th century. While there is no evidence that heraldic art originated in the course of the Crusades, there is no reason to doubt that the gathering of large armies, drawn from across Europe for a united cause, would have encouraged the adoption of armorial bearings as a means of identifying one's commanders in the field, or that it helped disseminate the principles of armory across Europe. At least two distinctive features of heraldry are generally accepted as products of the Crusaders. The surcoat, an outer garment worn over the armor to protect the wearer from the heat of the sun, was often decorated with the same devices that appeared on a knight's shield. It is from this garment that the phrase coat of arms is derived. Also the lambrequin, or mantling, that depends from the helmet and frames the shield in modern heraldry, began as a practical covering for the helmet and the back of the neck during the Crusades, serving much the same function as the surcoat. Its slashed or scalloped edge, today rendered as billowing flourishes, is thought to have originated from hard wearing in the field, or as a means of deadening a sword blow and perhaps entangling the attacker's weapon. Heralds and heraldic authorities. The spread of armorial bearings across Europe soon gave rise to a new occupation. The herald, originally a type of messenger employed by noblemen, assumed the responsibility of learning and knowing the rank, pedigree, and heraldic devices of various knights and lords, as well as the rules and protocols governing the design and description, or blazoning of arms, and the precedence of the bearer. As early as the late 13th century, certain heralds in the employ of monarchs were given the title King of Heralds, which eventually became King of Arms. Quote, "In the earliest period, arms were assumed by the bearers without any need for heraldic authority. However, by the middle of the 14th century, the principle that only a single individual was entitled to bear a particular coat of arms was generally accepted, and disputes over the ownership of arms seems to have led to gradual establishment of heraldic authorities to regulate the use. The earliest known work of heraldic jurisprudence, De Insigniis Re Armis, was written about 1350 by Batlude, a Saxo-Ferrato, a professor of law at the University of Padua. The most celebrated armorial dispute in English heraldry is that of Scrope v. Grosvenor, in which two different men claimed the right to bear azure abend, or the continued proliferation of arms, and the number of disputes arising from different men assuming the same arms, led Henry V to issue a proclamation in 1419, forbidding all those who had not borne arms at the Battle of Agincourt from assuming arms, except by inheritance or a grant from the crown. Beginning in the reign of Henry VIII, the kings of arms were commanded to make visitations, in which they travelled about the country, recording arms borne under proper authority, and requiring those who bore arms without authority either to obtain authority for them, or cease the use. Arms borne improperly were to be taken down and defaced. The first such visitation began in 1530, and the last was carried out in 1700, although no new commissions to carry out visitations were made after the accession of William III in 1689. In 1484, during the reign of Richard III, the various heralds employed by the Crown were incorporated into the College of Arms, through which all new grants of arms would eventually be issued. The college currently consists of 3 kings of arms, assisted by 6 heralds, and 4 pursuivants, or junior officers of arms, all under the authority of the Earl Marshal, but all of the arms granted by the college are granted by the authority of the Crown. Similar bodies regulate the granting of arms in other monarchies and several members of the Commonwealth of Nations, but in most other countries there is no heraldic authority, and no law preventing anyone from assuming whatever arms they please, provided that they do not infringe upon the arms of another. Later uses and developments. Although heraldry originated from military necessity, it soon found itself at home in the pageantry of the medieval tournament. The opportunity for knights and lords to display the heraldic bearings in a competitive medium led to further refinements, such as the development of elaborate tournament helms, and further popularized the art of heraldry throughout Europe. Prominent burghers and corporations, including many cities and towns, assumed or obtained grants of arms, with only nominal military associations. Heraldic devices were depicted in various contexts, such as religious and funerary art, and in using a wide variety of media, including stonework, carved wood, enamel, stained glass, and embroidery. As the rise of firearms rendered the mounted knight increasingly relevant on the battlefield during the 16th and 17th centuries, and the tournament faded into history, the military character of heraldry gave way to its use as a decorative art, freed from the limitations of actual shields and the need for arms to be easily distinguished in combat. Heraldic artists designed increasingly elaborate achievements, culminating in the development of landscape heraldry, incorporating realistic depictions of landscapes. During the latter part of the 18th and early part of the 19th century, these fell out of fashion during the mid-19th century, when a renewed interest in the history of armory led to the re-evaluation of earlier designs, and a new appreciation for the medieval origins of the art. Since the late 19th century, heraldry has focused on the use of varied lines of partition and little-used ordinaries to produce new and unique designs.